How do you tax global tech giants like Google, Meta, and Amazon, who generate substantial profits from Canadian users and the Canadian market, but often pay a disproportionately small amount of local tax? It's a question many countries are grappling with, and Canada has proposed its own solution. Canada's answer to this complex issue is the Digital Services Tax, or DST. The DST proposes a 3% tax on the revenue that large digital corporations generate within Canada, specifically those earning over €750 million globally, and $20 million specifically attributable to Canadian users. It targets revenue streams from online marketplaces, social media platforms, search engines, and the increasingly valuable sales of user data. The Canadian government estimates this tax could raise $7.2 billion over 5 years, funds that would then be directed towards essential public services. The underlying logic is quite straightforward. If you are generating profit from Canadian consumers and within the Canadian economy, you should contribute to Canada, in the same way that local businesses do through various taxes and levies. Canada is not alone in this endeavor. It joined countries like France and the UK in what has become a global push for greater digital tax fairness and equity, with the DST being made retroactive to January 2022. For many observers, this was a long overdue step, representing a move toward greater fairness and balance in the rapidly evolving digital economy. As Canada moved closer to implementing its Digital Services Tax, a move designed to modernize its tax system for the digital age, the US President Donald Trump, known for his assertive trade policies, issued a very public and direct ultimatum. His words carried significant weight, given the close economic ties between the two nations. He framed the tax as a direct attack on American companies, particularly the tech giants that would be most affected by the new levy. He then threatened to halt all ongoing and future trade talks with Canada if the country proceeded with its plans. This was a serious blow, as these talks were aimed at strengthening the economic partnership. Even more severe, and signaling a potential trade war, he promised retaliatory tariffs of up to 50%, a figure that sent shockwaves through the Canadian economy. These tariffs would be imposed on a wide range of Canadian exports to the US, potentially crippling key sectors of the Canadian economy. This was no idle threat. Trade negotiations were absolutely crucial for both countries, representing a vital pathway for economic growth and stability. The imposition of such tariffs could devastate Canadian industries, leading to job losses and a significant economic downturn. The Canadian government now faced a stark and unenviable choice, a decision that would have far-reaching consequences for the nation. Should they defend its new tax, standing firm on their sovereign right to set their own fiscal policy, or risk a full-blown trade war with the United States, its largest trading partner, a conflict that could have devastating economic repercussions? The pressure was immediate and intense, a palpable sense of urgency gripping Ottawa as officials grappled with the gravity of the situation. With the clock ticking relentlessly down to the DST's launch date, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Canada's economic independence, its ability to chart its own course in the global economy, was suddenly and dramatically at stake. The US is Canada's top trading partner. 75% of Canadian exports head south. Tariffs of 50% would make Canadian goods unaffordable, threatening jobs in auto, energy, forestry, and agriculture. Supply chains, especially in the auto sector, would be shattered, risking factory closures and mass layoffs. Suspending trade talks would stall progress on key economic issues, creating uncertainty for businesses and investors, the potential lost billions in export revenue and a possible recession. The government had to weigh $7.2 billion in DST revenue against the risk of economic catastrophe. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Facing overwhelming economic risk and the potential for significant trade disruptions, Canada made a difficult decision. Just hours before it was set to launch and potentially ignite a trade war, Canada scrapped the Digital Services Tax, DST. This reversal marked a pivotal moment in the ongoing dispute. The US government, upon hearing the news, immediately withdrew its threatened tariffs. This de-escalation paved the way for both nations to resume crucial trade talks, seeking a more amicable resolution. In addition, Canada secured the removal of Section 899, a punitive US tax that had been negatively impacting Canadian firms, adding another layer of relief to the situation. It was a clear trade-off, a calculated move on both sides to prevent further economic damage. Canada effectively dropped its planned tax on US tech giants, a policy that had been a major point of contention. In return, the US lifted its looming tax threat against Canadian businesses, removing a significant burden from their shoulders. The immediate crisis was averted, preventing what could have been a damaging trade war between the two nations. However, this resolution came at a cost. Canada lost an estimated $7.2 billion in projected revenue, funds that were initially earmarked for important public programs. This is money that could have been allocated to bolster essential public services such as healthcare, education, and infrastructure development. Critics of the decision argued that Canada's policy independence was significantly compromised by the US pressure. Furthermore, international allies expressed their worries about the precedent that this situation set for future trade disputes. The global community observed that US pressure had successfully forced a sovereign nation to abandon its own carefully considered tax policy. Consequently, Canada's reputation for standing firm on its principles and policies took a noticeable hit on the international stage. Was Canada's decision pragmatic or a capitulation? Supporters say it protected jobs and economic stability, prioritizing the national interest over a single tax. The removal of Section 899 and resumption of trade talks were tangible wins for Canadian businesses. Critics argue Canada surrendered to US pressure, sacrificing billions in revenue and its policy sovereignty. The move set a worrying precedent. Could other policies be reversed under foreign threats? Canada's cancelled DST highlights the tension between principle and power for middle power nations. In the end, the debate remains: was it a wise retreat or a costly surrender?